Hey, what's up, guys? It's WiseGuyVito here, and today I have another tier list for you guys. This will be after the Freedom of Escalation update, the supposed really big update that really wasn't that big. It just added a few more newer enemies, and then a war bomb was released 2 days after it. Nothing has really much changed in the game except for like a few weapons. A few weapons got nerfed. Some of them got buffed. But today I'm going to go over what I think is the best weapons against the Terminids versus the not so great weapons against the Terminids. So like, share, subscribe, and let's get into the video. So S tier would be, it's a fantastic in every scenario for the most part, where a primary would be used. This weapon just excels, feels really great to use. Overall, this weapon is just a very solid choice against the Terminids. A tier, it may have like a weakness or two, but for the most part, the overall feel of the weapon, the power of the weapon is above average. B tier is just, it's an average plain Jane weapon. There's nothing really to it other than it just feels average. C tier is that it's below average. It needs something to kind of help it out. Some buffs would be nice to this weapon. And then D tier is, it's a dookie weapon. It's trash. It really needs either a rework or just massive buffs to it. Or maybe it's even missing some sort of identity to it as well. And just needs an overall help to the weapon. But with the tier explanation out of the way, let's get into what weapons are the best and what weapons are not so great. So we'll go over the Adjudicator real quick. I think the Adjudicator is A tier. Power's really good on it. It's medium armor penetration. It's got a decent magazine to it. The overall feel of the weapon is better too. I actually really do think this weapon is actually a solid pick. I think it's probably one of the better choices, if not the better choices, with the in the Liberator tree. We'll kind of go over the Tenderizer later, but I think that this is really, really good. Just like overall, like damage is solid for the most part. It's just an overall just a solid choice. I think the only thing that's the downside to it is its damage. Its damage is okay. It's not anything too crazy, but it does pretty well. But the main draw to it is that it's medium armor penetration, so you can handle things like Bile Spewers and Hive Guardians very well with it. But overall, the weapon is a solid choice. The Blitzer is probably the best against Terminids currently. It's either one of the best or the best. They fixed the bug where whenever you're shooting it, it had like the arc inconsistencies. Like sometimes like the arc shocks or whatever would just not go out or hit a dead body, or it just wouldn't consistently go out and actually hit enemies. But even then, like before the bug, it was still S tier. Now it is very much an S tier weapon. Fast fire rate, you can now fire it full auto now, which means that you can just hold down left click and it just shoots forever. The arc spread is actually very wide and it does decent damage. Plus, it's a stun gun for the most part, so it does a good amount of stagger and has a decent amount of damage to it as well. And you never have to worry about ammo, so you can just literally just hold left click and just keep on shooting until everything is dead. That's chaff. Even some tankier enemies like Brute Commanders and such, and Bile Spewers and Nursing Spewers, you can handle them no problem whatsoever. So definitely use the Blitzer. It's definitely like one of the better guns in the game. The Breaker, this is just like the regular Breaker. I want to put it in like low A for the most part. I don't feel like this gun is like absolutely just garbage. I just think it has an ammo problem. If it had more ammo in its magazines, then I think it'd be fine at that point. Maybe like a slight damage buff, but for the most part, I think that the problem with this weapon is it has a really bad ammo problem to it. But other than that, it's actually it's still a fairly decent weapon. It just needs ammo to it. It has a lot of stopping power behind it. It kills things very quickly, but you just run out of ammo very quickly. So once they fix that, it would definitely go up into S tier. The Cookout, definitely do think that it's S tier. It staggers and it sets things on fire. What's not to like about that? And not only does it, but with the stagger, it also pushes things back. So if you bring like a napalm strike or a gas orbital strike, you can actually push things back into the like an area of effect that's doing continuous dot damage while you're doing dot damage to it, or damage over time to it, and it's a fantastic pump weapon. I think all the pump shotguns in this game are actually fairly decent. They're either fairly decent or just very good. So I think that the cookout is a fairly good shotgun. The counter sniper diligence I think is A tier. You know, I think this is a weapon made for automatons, in my opinion. It has a very low magazine for Terminids, in my opinion, because you get swarmed very, very quickly. But the saving grace to this weapon is that it does do, you know, like a fairly decent amount of damage, but it's it's medium armor penetration. So you can handle things like Hive Guardians and Bile Spewers and stuff like that. And you can also just snipe from afar as well. So if you see a patrol running around or whatever, you can take out patrols fairly decently. Super Helldive, I think this weapon kind of falls off pretty hard because, like I said, like you're just getting swarmed by everything in Terminids. So that's why I think that, in my opinion, if for example, like the regular diligence was better, then I think that you'd probably run the diligence over the counter sniper diligence, right? But as far as the counter sniper goes, it's fairly decent. I do think it's above average because of the medium armor penetration. The defender, I feel like the defender has kind of fallen off a bit, but I think that it is probably still an A tier weapon. You can use it one-handed. I think it's still probably like it's an AR in a lot of regards, right? In which you can just kind of just use it as an AR platform, but it's a submachine gun. It does fairly decent damage. Has a good fire rate to it. Like I said, like you can use it one-handed as well. So if you're carrying like a mutated egg on Super Helldive, you'd be doing fairly well with it. But for the most part, it's always been a solid choice overall. So I would, you know, I'm putting it in an A tier. It's not S tier level of performance in my opinion, because it's kind of just like a basic SMG. But for the most part, you know, it does its job. The diligence, the regular diligence, I'm gonna put it in C tier. I think this thing needs a damage buff still. I actually think that it should probably do more damage than the counter sniper, because at that point, if let's say if it did like way more damage and be able to one-shot hunters, I think that I would be running this a lot more. And that's a shame, because I think at one point the diligence was probably like one of the better weapons in the game. It's just that everything else has kind of overshadowed it, and now it's kind of not good. Even after they buffed it, I believe they buffed the damage of it at one point or another, and it still doesn't feel that great to use. Even on automatons, it still doesn't feel that great to use. But as far as Terminids go, you know, I wish that there was the ability of one-shotting hunters, and at that point, I actually do think that it would be balanced at that point, and it would be in a much, much, much better place. But in its current state, I cannot recommend it. I would have to put it as a below-average thing. I don't think that it's trash. It's still somewhat usable. It's just that the performance of it is much to be desired. I would even take like the regular Liberator over the Diligence any day on Terminids. The Dominator, it's S tier still. Being able to medium armor penetrate, does decent amount of damage as well. Handles Hive Guardians, Brood Commanders, Bile Spewers, Nursing Spewers, more tankier enemies. Even that, I would probably say it probably needs some sort of like a magazine buff or some sort of reserve buff. Other than that, I think it's fine. But you do have to reload a lot with this gun. But the overall performance of it is very, very good. So it's an explosive weapon as well. So like I said, it does a lot of upfront damage, and it's still like one of the top choices against Terminids. The Torture, I feel like, is probably mid. I wish that the Flames was a little bit better. Other than that, I think that it would be a better choice. Currently, right now, how you have to run this thing is that you have to spray the ground in front of you in order to get anything done. If it had, you know, at that point, it actually services very, very well as a crowd control. My only issue with this thing is that I wish that it did a lot more direct damage, and currently it doesn't. Once it does more direct damage, I think that it would be a way better option overall. And it might be even like an A tier weapon at that point if it did a lot more direct damage. But as a crowd control, spray the ground in front of you type of deal, whenever there's a horde coming up on you, I actually do think that it does very, very well. The Eruptor, it is bad. It's still bad. Even with the explosive increase that it got, or the damage increase that it got, I think of like 120 damage or whatever, 120, 150. They can give this thing 300 damage for all I care, and it would still be ass, because the identity of the weapon is that it is a shrapnel weapon. It's not a shrapnel weapon. It is a ass version of the autocannon. Sorry, the mods can go glizzy guzzle. I remember seeing so many people defending this weapon in the Helldivers 2 Discord. This weapon is still ass. It is booty. It is dumb. Okay? Now, whenever it first came out, it was extremely overpowered. The reason why is because it came with 12 magazines in reserve, and it did that much damage with shrapnel. Okay? All it needed was an ammo reduction, and then once they did that, it was perfect. It was by far, like, it was a solid weapon. It was balanced at that point. But once they removed the shrapnel, the gun sunk. It's terrible. It just is. It doesn't handle hordes well. It doesn't handle bigger enemies well. It's slow firing. It's ass. End of story. No one should be defending this weapon, and if they are, they're glizzy guzzlers at this point. Okay. The explosive crossbow is another ass weapon. What they did to it this past escalation of this escalation of freedom update is that they were like, we still feel like it's underpowered, so we're giving it the ability to be fired one-handed. Wow, thanks, Arrowhead. This is not going to make me use it. It's still ass. The explosive crossbow was very good on pre-patch, in my opinion. Whenever it first came out, it was a very good crowd control weapon. It was very, very good, actually, whenever it first came out as a crowd control. The only thing they needed was a projectile speed up, and that was it. And like, it'd be balanced at that point. It would actually be something that I would be wanting to use on Terminids more often as like a little fun little build. But the problem is that they completely gutted this weapon into a medium armor busting weapon for whatever reason, and it still feels really bad. It just does. This gun by far is one of the worst weapons in the game still, and making it a one-handed weapon is not going to change that fact. Versatility does not mean that the gun performance is still good. It just means that you have more options, but it's still ass. Okay, it's basically a Swiss Army knife, but it's a very, very rusty and dull Swiss Army knife. The Incendiary Breaker, it has fallen tremendously from where it was up here. It's A tier though. By itself, it's probably B, to be honest with you, because of the magazine decrease. Just kind of gutted the weapon a little bit, in my opinion. But with an ammo supply pack, I probably would put it in S tier with an ammo supply pack, but you're using a stratagem to kind of back it up. So I'm going to kind of put it in A tier for the time being, because it's still good for like swarms. So like, if you get swarmed by a bunch of hunters, you can basically just spray and pray with this thing and it'd be fine. It needs to be reverted back to where it was, in my opinion. I didn't feel like it was overpowered. I don't think a lot of people thought it was overpowered, just because a third of the people, which by the way, that's only a third. That's not like over half. That's not 60%, 70%, right? It's only a third of the player base, okay, was using this on Terminids. It's probably because it was kind of only a Terminid weapon, because no one was using this on automatons. And if people were using this on automatons, they were dumb, because this thing has no stagger whatsoever. And on automaton missions, you need stagger. You need something to kind of stop the Devastators from just nailing you from half across the map with their little machine guns and everything else, right? It's dumb, okay? But overall, as far as in Terminids, I still would find this to be an A tier weapon. It needs its ammo back. It runs out of ammo way too quickly now. So it's ammo starved. Feed it. Give us some more ammo. The Liberator Carbine, I feel like, is really bad. I was actually kind of excited for this because it was another Liberator line, and I was hoping that they would actually get this one right. They did not get this one right. This is basically just a more shit version of Liberator. It fires quicker, right? So like you would think, okay, well, it fires quicker and has more recoil, and it's like a little compact version, right? So I would think, okay, well, the magazine's probably gonna have to be bigger, right? It's like 65 rounds or something like that. Nope, it's the same magazine as the regular Liberator, right? This is a weapon attachment, in my opinion, to the regular Liberator, right? This is just a skin, in my opinion. It's not that great. It fires way too. It fires way too fast. It has way too much recoil for how much is actually in the magazine. This should have like 65, 70 rounds into it. Make it a smaller caliber of a gun and just give it more ammo. And make the recoil actually manageable, and then it would probably be like an A-tier weapon at that point, because at that point it would be kind of like a spray and pray, kind of like a, kind of like a little submachine gun, a little bit, in my opinion, but it just does less damage than the Defender, right? So you get more ammo, you have a better recoil pattern, or just better recoil overall, and it does less damage than a Defender. And I think it'd actually be pretty good. But right now, it has no identity. It's just a worse off Liberator, in my opinion. Liberator, concussive, it's fine. It's not like, no, it's bad. It's bad. What's there to say? There's already a gun here in this column somewhere that basically does the exact same thing. It just does it better, like overall. Actually, no, I'm putting D tier. This gun's ass. It's again, like, it's an attachment for the regular Liberator, in my opinion. So like, why even use it? It's there's, like I said, like, there's already gun somewhere in here, the Pummeler, that just, like, the Pummeler does it better, and it kills. Like, why even have this in the game, right? It's just that bad of a weapon. So I wouldn't even use this on Terminids, in my opinion. The only saving grace is that it does stagger, so it can do like CC work, but the Pummeler does that better. So why run the concussive whenever you can run the Pummeler? Liberator Penetrator, I think it's still not great. It still feels really bad to use. It has armor penetration, but who cares? Guess what gun does this better? The Adjudicator. The Adjudicator does more damage. It has armor medium penetration to it. Just because the Liberator has maybe like a better sight and better recoil, who cares? I'm on PC, so I can just run the recoil way better on the Adjudicator than I can the Penetrator, right? This gun, in my opinion, again, it's an attachment to the Liberator. I just don't understand why they're putting in these carbines whenever, like, again, the Liberator tree just sucks. It's always sucked, and I don't know why they're trying to buff these weapons whenever, like, these weapons should be attachments, really, in my opinion. Like, this is just a skin. That's a skin, and that's a skin. It's just gussied up Liberator. It's Liberator with like a few extra steps, but even then, like, the Liberator's better. It's weird, right? Liberator is average, and it needs to stay average. It is the first gun that you use in the game. Move on for something else. All the Liberators and Joys out there, you can enjoy this weapon. That's fine, but it needs to stay a plain Jane weapon. It needs to be the average weapon. It is the starting standard weapon that all Helldivers get. It needs to stay that way. It doesn't need any more buffs. It's fine where it is. It's cool. That's it. It is a good starting out beginner weapon. That's it. Punisher, Plasma Punisher, it's S tier, just because of the CC abilities and be able to kill things and medium armor penetration. It can kill groups of enemies with a few shots. Like, what does there say? Great reload to it. Projectile speed is fantastic. The only weakness to it, I think, is Screechers, but that's no big deal because the projectile speed is faster, so like you can be able to hit groups of Shriekers out of the sky with it. So I find it to be fairly good. Pummeler is A tier. This again, like I said, this is basically just the Liberator concussive. Fires faster, stuns more things consistently than the Liberator concussive, and it kills. So why not use it, right? The Punisher pump action, I actually do think this thing is S tier. It does a lot more upfront damage. It staggers very, very well. It's just a good just like stopping gun. Even though it's light armor penetration, it still cuts through medium armor on like the bile spewers, like specifically. And like I said before, like it staggers, so like it does a lot of upfront damage. It staggers and it kind of cuts through some medium armor penetration, or has some sort of medium armor penetration to it, even though it says light armor penetration to it. So I find it to be a fairly, very, very good weapon on Terminids whenever dealing with like groups of enemies and stuff like that. Because you kind of just like decimate tankier enemies, especially if you're on those maps with bile spewers and nursing spewers. Purifier's ass. They need to up the damage on this considerably, or significantly. This should be two-shotting Hive Guardians, and it doesn't. It takes about 4 or 5 shots to kill Hive Guardian. Fully charged, by the way. This is just a worse Scorcher and a worse Punisher. It has no identity currently in the game. End of story. Scorcher, I think, is A tier. I think it is fine. I think the only problem with it is that it probably needs an ammo buff to it. But other than that, but I feel like this gun is more of an automaton gun than it is a Terminid gun overall. The Scythe, I feel like it is better. Okay, probably A tier, because now it can burn, which is very, very good for the Scythe. And because of that, I kind of want to put it in A tier for the time being. I feel like that's a bug because like they did not mention it in the patch notes. But then again, Arrowhead has done things in the past on buffing weapons without telling anybody anything about it, which is a big no-no on their part, because they should be telling people what they are changing to their game and put it in their damn patch notes, and they're just not doing it. But the Scythe, the dagger, anything that has like a laser to it, even like the laser cannon, it can now burn things now whenever you hit things with it. So like I kind of feel like it's a solid A tier. Sickle, I feel like it's A tier. It does very, very good against just like chaff, swarms, hunters, some brew commanders, but I think the weakness is that it doesn't have any medium armor penetration to it, and that's fine. I think it's fine where it's at. I really don't think it needs any more changes. I think it's just above average gun. Slugger, I feel like it's probably A tier as well. It's not really good against swarms. It's just really good against like hive guardians, anything with medium armor penetration to it. Again, like this does it very well, and it does stagger, so it can be able to push things back. I'd rather run the Punisher over the Slugger, but the Slugger does have some use cases for as far as like range combat. The Spray and Pray sucks absolute monster cock. It is so bad. It needs to have some sort of modifier to it just to make it interesting, right? Any type of like bird-like enemy in the game, right? It should do more damage to it. Now, gunships are another thing, right? Of course, because like it'd be kind of funny or kind of stupid, and if they're gonna go on this whole like binge of like but my realism, obviously it would look kind of silly if you brought a Spray and Pray in to mess up a bunch of gunships on automatons, right? But as far as Terminids go, give it a modifier to where you can do more damage and consistent damage against hunters and shriekers, because hunters are kind of bird-like as far as like how they look, and of course shriekers are flying enemies, right? Just give it a modifier to where it does way more damage to those, and it kind of be like like a niche weapon for the most part. And I feel like it'd be kind of like an average weapon at that point. It would just be very niche, kind of like use case scenario type of thing. But overall, like it just doesn't, like, it's still really bad. I almost kind of think that it needs a damage buff overall. But it definitely needs some sort of modifier against like shriekers and hunters, I think personally, if they were to buff the weapon. The Knight, I mean, like, it's okay. I just feel like it probably needs something. I don't know what they could do to this weapon, to be completely honest with you. It feels fine to use. I just think that it needs a little something to it. Maybe medium armor penetration? Maybe. I don't know. Just something just to give it like a little bit more identity in the game. But it's not dookie. It's just like okay, you know. It's just meh performance. And the tenderizer. So the tenderizer, I'm gonna put in A tier for the time being. I would put it in average, and the reason why is because even though it feels great to use and does a lot of damage, the problem with it is that it runs out of ammo way too quickly. I constantly have to be reloading this thing. This is basically the breaker shotgun of the Liberators, where it does a lot of damage, but like it has no ammo to it. It needs like 5 more bullets in the magazine. It needs way more ammo in reserve. It's light armor penetrating. Okay, it needs more to it. Just overall, it just needs more to the gun. And then once it has those things, it could probably be an S tier gun at that point. But it just doesn't feel like great to use whenever you are reloading whenever you are reloading all the time. But overall, I feel like the weapon is still like it feels fantastic to use. So I have to be fair to it. I just think that it just needs more ammo. But anyways, that's my tier list. You guys let me know where I'm right, where I'm wrong in the comment section. You tell me what you think about my tier list, where things should be moved and placed and stuff like that, and what buffs and nerfs would you make to primaries. I personally think that whenever you have a good portion of your guns in D tier, in my opinion, I think that's a problem. I don't think that there really should be many D tier guns in this game currently, and I think that these guns really need to be buffed in some way, shape, or form to kind of make them interesting, give them the identity back, even where Arrowhead's kind of like stripped them away, and now they're just completely gutted for everybody to see. Right? This is my tier list. You guys let me know. Like I said before, let me know what you think down in the comment section down below, what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.